Let's go! Lucas Taylor flips from LSU to Mississippi State, and this is the position of need that we discussed in yesterday's video, right? LSU needs more offensive linemen, not less. So what we're going to do is discuss what actually happened here, because obviously Lucas Taylor just visited Baton Rouge, and he was talking about how much he loved LSU, and now just a few days later he flips to Mississippi State. Maybe, just maybe, this was something LSU wanted to happen. So what we're going to do is do a film study, and I'm going to let you, like we always do, decide for yourself if Lucas Taylor is actually a player that LSU really needed, because we did basically the same thing with Le'Veon Moss, where we dug deep to see how valuable this player is, because you have to understand the value of a recruiting slot means something so much more than what it does 5 years ago. So each and every slot is of immense importance, because that slot can be left open for the transfer portal. So if you're going to give one of your 25 recruiting slots to a high school prospect, you better really believe that that kid can turn out to be a Division I player. So in just a second, you're going to get to do your own film analysis with me and make your own choice on Lucas Taylor. So yes, this is a loss. However, maybe this is something Ed Orgeron, Brad Davis, and Jake Peets really wanted to do. This was the first weekend LSU finally got to have some in-person evaluation. That is something that obviously Ed Orgeron highly values in the recruiting process. This is also Jake Peets' first time, because of course he's only been at LSU for a few months now. So this is obviously a very crazy state of flux for LSU. And I understand you had this huge recruiting weekend, and the result of it was one player from Louisiana going to Alabama, and Lucas Taylor, of course, flipping at a position of need to an SEC West school. But once again, I bring it back up time and time again. If you don't think that a player can turn out to be great, then that slot is valuable. It could go to a JUCO transfer like a Damian Lewis or whoever, and that player actually help you. Also, what this does is it increases the pressure on Brad Davis from the get-go. So, of course, Brad Davis gets this huge $800,000 contract to be the offensive line coach at LSU, which is a $300,000 raise from what he was receiving at Arkansas. And he not only has to fix this current group and the backups, he also has to recruit this position to actually landing some of these out-of-state four-star linemen. And LSU, after the weekend that they had, not only got to see Lucas Taylor up close, they also got to recruit Cam Dewberry and Kelvin Banks and Julian Armella, and the list goes on there. Also, this does increase the pressure on LSU to land Emory Jones out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, an inside offensive lineman at a Catholic high who I am really high on. If you want to learn more about him, I do have a film study, and you can watch it linked down below. So, yes, it's pretty complex, but I still feel like our guy Michael here says, LSU needs to land, to me, 5 offensive linemen in this class. And just to give you a quick list, well, here's what we'll do. We'll get into the film, and then at the end of the video, I'll give you some names to look out for that I think LSU has a legit shot of landing, plus a few 3-star Louisiana kids. But first, let's actually see for yourself. You get to evaluate Lucas Taylor as a player. You know, the one thing when I watched his high school tape is he had a real mean streak in the running game. Here he is pulling and kicking out this guy. Once again, this is Mississippi high school football. I don't know too much about the talent level, but just watching this little bit, and that was actually a good play in pass protection there. But the one thing I'm going to show you about Lucas Taylor's game that concerned me was we didn't really see many pass sets. And obviously this is a passing play, but this is a rollout. As far as traditional pass sets, you didn't really see a whole lot of it in his high school tape. But he obviously plays with a lot of energy, a lot of mean streak in the running game. And you see, he likes to finish people. That's the kind of nasty physicality you like to see from your linemen. But what you'll see, though, is you notice he is playing offensive tackle, but his hand is in the ground on most snaps, which is that's not how it would be at LSU. But the point is he played in a very run-based attack, which against lesser athletes, you could just lean on them and just bury them to the ground like he did here. So you see here, it's a lot of these traditional running plays, just finishing people. And it's pretty good. I mean, you could see the potential that he had as an offensive lineman. And here he is pulling in the running game, tearing up someone that's really undersized. So that's the thing. This guy looks like a Division I offensive lineman, but he's going up against guys that are 5'6", 5'7". So what I want you to do is look at this, and as many of you know, I do value high school film over just 7-on-7 or whatever high school drill. But let's see how Lucas Taylor performed in pass sets. And we're going to go to this drill that, as a former defensive lineman, I used to love to do. But it's something you really have to be concerned, or you have to be skeptical about whenever you study it. So this is from a Rivals camp in 2018, so a few years ago. And once again, don't get too carried away. This is early in his development. But you see here, this is a little bit different. He is in a pass set. Now, I know a lot of people view him as an offensive guard, so he wouldn't be going up in an in versus an end like this at the college level. But you'll see this, and then you'll see what happened at the LSU camp this past weekend. When you get to evaluate an offensive lineman in this pass set, you get to see how he is as far as his get-off going up against guys that we know are as athletic or more athletic than he is. So that's the thing. And I've gotten so many clips about Will Campbell and all these guys struggling in this drill. The thing is, this pass rushing drill is very favorable to the defensive lineman simply because he knows the snap count. The quarterback, who you'll see in just a second, can't move. So, and of course, you're not going to get any help, double teams, or chips. So this is very unlifelike. But what you'll see in both of the clips we'll show you today, this is via Rivals, their footage, and we'll go ahead and play this clip. I'm going to turn the volume down. All right. And you see, that's just too easy. Okay. I am very sympathetic to offensive linemen that struggle in this drill simply because it does help out the defensive lineman so much. But that swim move is just too easy. And, of course, the quarterback can't move. But in an actual game, if you give up that least of resistance, the quarterback is going to get sacked. So, once again, this is from 2018, very early in his development, but we see the same exact move again. And you see how off balance he was? It's just not good. Okay, we go to the next rep, and he's going up against the same defensive lineman. It's the same thing. I mean, it's just easy pickings. Same guy, same thing, and he's holding him. Okay? Now, once again, that's from 2018, obviously a few years ago. Let's fast forward to 2021, and let's see if he has developed in this aspect. Now, this is some really good 4K footage from Julie Bodwin, and she's one of the best recruiting reporters in the country. So this was actually a good rep by him here. Look at that mean streak, and Ali Gay having to break them up. Okay? Then he gets beat bad and holds this guy, and I don't know what the heck he's doing here. He holds him, and then he rubs him into the turf like that. So this is Durante Jones in the background, okay? And I want you to notice this. So Brad Davis couldn't be with the with everyone because ink hasn't dried yet, but he was able to watch from afar, so he couldn't have contact with some recruits. And everyone sent me this clip, and you're asking if this is Ty G. Hill. It's not. It's Bush, but it looks pretty good. It looks like he's a. I don't know who Bush is. He obviously looks like a pretty decent prospect. So this is not. You're going to see Lucas Taylor going up against a really elite prospect in just a second, but I want you to see the reaction. So here is Durante Jones doing his own evaluation of obviously this young man, and this is in slow-mo. Okay, so we get the hold here. Okay. Leans, and you'll see him do the same thing right here. Holds, brings him down. This is just cheap. So Ed Orgeron is obviously getting his evaluation. We can't see his personal evaluation, but I want you to look at the face of Jake Peetz here, okay? All right. He's like, what is going on? And now Lucas Taylor is just driving this guy after holding him. This is just a cheap shot. And look at this, okay? All right? Look at the look on Jake Peetz's face. You obviously can't take too much away from just one rep. We're going to get to a few more reps. So this is one of the issues with a mean street guy that plays a little wild is things like this happen. And if I was a coach, if I was Jake Peetz, who is the offensive coordinator, this is something I would not like to see. Sometimes it's tough to tame a guy that plays at such high intensity. And based on what I've learned and what I've seen, Lucas Taylor can get a little wild and a little extracurricular, which means that not only does he play with a lack of physical control, also some emotional control as well. Now, once again, very early in his development, he could be the next Remington or Outland winner, whatever. But still, this reaction tells you a lot. Okay, now this is a rep, okay? This is a rep that had me going, okay, well, we might have an issue here. All right? So once again, you're rarely going to see an offensive guard in a pass set like this right here, okay? So the ball is snapped, and he is leaning, all right? That is a death sentence for an offensive guard because it gets you off balance and it opens you up for swim moves over the top. And this was my favorite move as a 3-tech. When I would fire off the ball and I saw an offensive lineman lean like this with no balance, eventually what is going to happen if an offensive guard leans like this is they're going to get tossed forward. I could tell you just off the snap what was going to happen on this rep. And once again, the video is not at the absolute perfect angle, but I knew right here he was going to eventually get tossed forward with the swim move or a push-pull, okay? And then let's just slow motion this. I'll go ahead and play the clip at full speed. I mean, that's not good at all, okay? All right, first thing. Starts off leaning, then gets up really high, and then sticks his head down right into this guy. So he's just grabbing, not even looking at the target, and his head is down. Now, once again, I don't know who his offensive line coach is, but you saw in the earlier clips that they are a run-based team in Mississippi. And you see here, this is just bad. He started off leaning, then got upright, then he put his head down like this, and now you're just going to get tossed forward. It's going to happen every single time. Now, he was able to reset just a little bit, but you see he has no leverage. He's getting full extension, and once again, like I told you, he's just going to get tossed forward, and that's all you got to do. Toss him forward, and honestly, I'm shocked this defensive lineman didn't get rid of him quicker. And now you're just grabbing, and you're going to get your quarterback killed. And the thing is, when you give up pressure from the interior like this, it's harder for the quarterback to escape. And it all happens really fast. And, that's the thing. You have to balance this out. Lucas Taylor's high school tape, he is dominating people in an actual game setting, but it's also run-based football, which is not what modern offenses are going to do, and especially not what Mississippi State's going to do. It's just the simple truth. It's no longer 44 blasts through the B gap. You have to be quick out of your pass sets. Okay? Here's Andre Carter. Here's Ollie Gay, Jake Peets. And they're all doing this evaluating. And remember, you saw Jake Peets spending a lot of time with Brad Davis earlier in this camp series. So let's go on ahead and run this rep out. And full disclosure, this young man is one of the best defensive line prospects I've ever seen. This is David Hicks, okay? And he is a monster. 5-star out of Texas. I would like to include that I do have a personal tie to this young man, David Hicks. So I always like to disclose that because you come here for objective analysis. But this kid was the best defensive lineman at the camp this weekend. And that's not me saying that. That's what every recruiting writer you'll read. He was amongst the best with Quincy Wiggins. And you see, you're going to see a lot of David Hicks at the Division I level. And here's the thing. David Hicks is 2023. So this is a junior in high school. Once again, this is the best defensive line prospect. He's up there. Now, he's not obviously a Clowney level guy, but he's special. And he just had no shot. You see, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. Sticks his head down again, and just gets pulled down. When you stick your head down, and he's essentially doing the splits here, and he's just grabbing for air. Now, in his defense, it is really hard to block these defensive linemen when they don't have shirts on. It's already hard enough without pads. But if they're sweaty, there's nothing for you to grab on. So that is very important to keep in mind. Quincy Wiggins also had a lot of snaps where he dominated. But once again, I mean, there's so much pressure on all these guys. Look, you even see Mason Smith in this top left corner. So all these, big-time linemen that they're friends with, you're competing. This is your first in-person real evaluation here. So, once again, there's so much going in the defensive lineman's favor. Even Will Campbell had a few rough pass sets, himself. So these drills are really hard from an offensive lineman's perspective. But I think we can agree that Lucas Taylor's reps were particularly troublesome as well. And if anyone, and I was looking, if anyone has a good rep of Lucas, now his first rep was really good, but if anyone has more Lucas Taylor film, feel free to send it to me. And obviously, I always say this is my exact feeling on evaluating prospects. Once again, these are just high schoolers. This is just my personal evaluation. And obviously, LSU took this evaluation very seriously, considering how fast things moved from Lucas Taylor going from loving LSU to all of a sudden just flipping to Mississippi State, all within a 72-hour period of each other. So, keep that in mind because it's so much harder to block a shirtless defensive lineman. So here's the interesting thing about Lucas Taylor to wrap this thing up. What happens sometimes is especially at offensive line where only 5 guys play and they play at all times, what they don't want is Lucas Taylor to dissuade more offensive linemen from potentially considering LSU because, well, Lucas Taylor is already there. What's very fascinating, though, whenever you actually look at his recruiting profile, is Brad Davis was his primary recruiter at Arkansas. So, obviously that Brad Davis liked him from when he was at Arkansas, right? Well, obviously a lot could change. This is obviously your first in-person evaluation. So as far as if there was a situation where LSU just wanted to move on or whatever, we don't know. We honestly just do not know. However, there's a few things you have to consider with Lucas Taylor. Now, you've done your own personal evaluation, and obviously before you comment, I want you to hear me out on this, okay? Lucas Taylor, where we saw him dominate was on simple run-based plays. So just pulling around, kicking out ends, and double teams and all of that. You guys got to see that a little bit earlier. And he had a few good pass sets on his huddle tape. However, the game of football is moving towards more athletic defensive linemen. And what's going to happen is, as the game becomes more passing-oriented, you're going to see more thoroughbreds, athletes at that 3 technique position at defensive tackle, Where now, if you're LSU and you're Jake Peetz and you're Ed Orgeron and you've already said, look, we're going to run more five-man protection moving forward, well, what that means is that offensive guard is going to be man-on-man versus a defensive tackle. So essentially, you're going to be going up against rush ends in that 3 technique, which essentially makes you a third offensive tackle, which makes you being a one-on-one blocker that much more important. And based on what I saw from Lucas Taylor, he was giving up the rushes so easily that there's just no opportunity for a play to get off. So, yes, Lucas Taylor, his high school tape was good, and it could be even better. This guy could be a future Remington Outland guy. He's 6'5", 310. He's obviously got some good measurables here. It's just when you're projecting the future of football, you got to factor that into this evaluation as well. So that's something to keep in mind involving this. Now, the first is this. The pressure is now on for Brad Davis. And if you're paying a guy $830,000 to fix the weakest unit on this team, it's layered. Because keep in mind, Brad Davis can't just recruit. He also has some schematic issues that he's going to have to fix on the LSU offensive lines. And if this just happens to be the first time you've ever watched this channel, all you have to do is go watch any of my offensive line film studies, and you can learn what those schematic issues potentially are going to be and what they were last season. So Brad Davis not only has the pressure of losing an offensive lineman, he's going to have to get after Cam Dewberry and all these guys to potentially land one of these elite guys, which is what James Craig failed to do a lot at LSU. So the pressure on recruiting on these offensive linemen, reevaluating what Brad Davis's offensive line is going to look like currently into next season, there is a lot on the plate for Brad Davis, which, I've brought up in other episodes. Even though Ed Orgeron's specialty is not the offensive line, he's a defensive line coach, Andre Carter is in a better position than what Brad Davis is in. So maybe Ed Orgeron helps out with the offensive line, pass protection, and all those things, because it's not only an offensive line issue, it's also a tight end issue when it comes to blocking, which is what we talked about in our Cole Taylor film study. So there is obviously a lot to work on with this. And I'm actually going to add a third point here. So point number 2 is actually going to be point number 3. So here's point number 2, is the only gap between LSU and Alabama now is the offensive line. It's the only one. It's the only one. And, it's just the truth. The only sizable gap. And that's the case as well with us in Ohio State and us in Georgia right now, even though I obviously think LSU is a better program than Georgia, but Georgia has had better offensive lines than we've had. It's the only one. And point number 3 I'm going to make to round out this video is there needs to be an unlimited amount of offensive linemen to be signed in this class. What I mean by that is I would be more willing to risk a 3-star project than at offensive line than at other positions. Now, there is a risk with that because offensive linemen don't necessarily have value on special teams, as in they can't run down there and make tackles on kickoff and punt units. So their biggest, as far as value is concerned, their biggest contribution in terms of value is outside of offensive line and field goal team. There really isn't other factors or other jobs for offensive linemen to do, whereas when you sign extra DBs or a 3-star DB or a linebacker, they can contribute on those special team units. But I still do believe there should be an unlimited amount of offensive linemen to be signed in this class. I wouldn't mind 7. And I know that's drastic, but I would not mind a 7 offensive line class because I'm telling you, just based on that spring game, the starters and the backups need a lot of work, and this position needs a huge replenishing, and that is a total of 7. So it could be 6 high schoolers and a JUCO, or 6 high schoolers and an immediate transfer. I don't care. So here's the funny thing about today's video. I actually cut a lot out. We did breakdowns of Fitzgerald West, who I find to be very fascinating. He just got his LSU offer as a two-way player. We talked about Malik Agbo, Armella, all these guys. So we will be doing more offensive line recruiting content because it is such an important thing moving forward. I would like to see one change to these camps, and obviously this would make it more complex as far as travel is concerned because you got to carry pads and all of that. But because these offensive and defensive line drills and these in-person evaluations are so high stakes, I would like to see the drills done in pads where the prospects are actually wearing pads because it gives us a better look at an offensive lineman's fits when it comes to pass protection. So I think that would be a very wise change because, you know, it's a huge difference blocking a defensive lineman with no shirt on compared to a defensive lineman that actually has pads where you can get a fit. But yeah, we got more offensive line recruiting content coming up in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, comment down below any criticisms or anything you want to say about this video today. But yes, I'm really excited about Brad Davis and the future of this LSU offensive line. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! And if you want to keep watching some fun LSU content, there's a video floating in front of your face. Our Le'Veon Moss video from yesterday discussing offensive line positional value and all that good stuff. And I think we are doing some beef shawarma tonight. Let's go!